Minette coming to you from Loveland, Colorado. And this is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette, where we look at how we use creative process, art journaling, and collage to really connect to our own deep inner knowing. It is a powerful tool for growth, for introspection, and for deep reflection. And all week this week, I've been looking at different ways of using intuitive collage as part of our own journey and creative process. And pardon the bumpiness here for just a second. I'm going to lift my camera up a little bit. And I want to continue that journey, but first I wanted to do just a quick flip through of what we've been working on. I've done a lot of collage, slow stitching. I'm working in an old Horizons magazine, which is a beautiful magazine from the 60s and 70s that is an art journal, or that was all about the fine arts and writing. Tori, great to see you back. Good morning. So here's one that I worked on yesterday, and I've just been amazed at seeing all the stories that have been unfolding this week through this simple process of intuitive collage. So I look back at this one and I'm like, whoa, that's bright. That will definitely wake me up in the morning, but a lot of energy and movement and story. Here was one that I started yesterday and I have almost finished it, I think. So what I did was to just go back in and add some white to finish that up. The name of this piece is The Seekers. And the thought that came to me as I was working on this page was that copper, it's all covered in copper paint and it's super, super shiny. Sorry about that. But as above, so below. And there's always this feeling that we have to look both outward and inward. And often I feel I have to go inward before I can go outward. And in fact, this morning, I sat down to do some journaling and I ended up writing a poem about, I say I'm a writer, but I'm not writing, and I sometimes wish that words would flow from my pen as easily as paint does, but I also realize that, writing is the piece that takes us deeper. So it's fun to make these gorgeous collages, but it's important to sit with them and to ask the journaling prompts that are in the description below this video and really let these become our teachers. To me, that is the power of intuitive collage. But today I want to go a little bit different direction and I want to talk about using words. And I started to paint a hawk in here yesterday. So I have a lot of fun with these journals. Here's some other pages that are mixed media collage, but I'm flipping to the back because in the back of this magazine, the front is glossy, but the back has this nice newsprinty stuff in it, and I kind of like working on that newsprint. So I thought that I would come in and start with this page today. Or maybe I'll work on this side because it's a little easier for the camera. And I'm just always, I think one of the things that I'm loving most about this whole series of Painting in Your PJs Live is how many journals I'm filling. There's like a lot of just satisfaction in the filling of the journals. But the topic that I wanted to talk about today was how to add words. And this camera or this light over here is just being a little bit too glary. Let's see if we can move that without losing all of our light. Is about when and how to add words to our intuitive collage. And I have a whole box of words that when I'm flipping through magazines and I find, and I love cigar boxes, they are great for storing our collage images in. And when I find something in a magazine, a quote, a phrase, a headline, I will cut them out. Sometimes they get, cut apart into other words. I really love this follow your curiosity. And sometimes I might use the actual words in the collage. And sometimes I can write them on my own. I love this quote from Osho, creativity is the greatest rebellion in existence. Creativity is the greatest rebellion in existence. Ah, just brilliant. So I have this whole box of words from different places. Space for laughter, such a great one. Sometimes it's just a word, like I love the script on that one. Happy, so beautiful. So I pulled out a few this morning. But here's the thing about using words in your collage. And while I talk, I'm going to start getting some gesso down on this page. Or maybe I want to start, no, I'm going to start with paint today, and I'll show you why in a minute, which means I need some gesso. And I think I'm going to start with black gesso because I always love the effect of that. And I'm going to stick some paper under here just to kind of protect those other pages a little bit. If you're joining me live, welcome. If you are watching the replay, welcome also. Looking for my paintbrushes. I love starting with black gesso on the page instead of white gesso. It just creates a really cool effect on the page. And because this page I've already created on the other side, I know it's not going to rip or tear because it has a lot of layers added to the other side. And I don't need to cover the whole page either. I just want to get something down on that page. And I do want to get that all to the edge. And the reason we add gesso, I'll repeat myself one more time, is so that I can build up the layers on this page without worrying about the page tearing. And working in this magazine, I have had pages tear from the center and have had to reinforce those with paper tape is what I like to use to do that, but you could use masking tape or painter's tape or just about anything. Good morning, Blanca. All right, so I've got a little bit of paint down here on this page, black gesso to get me started. And I had angels on the brain this morning, so I'm going to do a painting. And I've just been super drawn to this woman. And I printed out some angel wings, and I printed them from my phone, so they didn't quite work, but it's kind of cool how they look, how they go all the way to the edge of the page. But I might hand draw them in and make them a little bit smaller, but I wanted something that would just kind of give me the shape and the outline. And no, I'm kind of liking them flowing off on the page, or maybe this one will even continue over onto this other page. Don't ask me why I had angels on the brain this morning. I don't think about angels that often. But it was what was on my brain. So I also love when I'm working with figures to, good morning, Judy. I'm so excited you're going to come spend the weekend with me in Color Coded Emotions and with Blanca as well. When you're working with figures, combining images and forms, I also looked at these fun butterfly wings, and I might still go with those butterfly wings. So I'm going to start to play, but to learn to combine images to tell a new story and to make the images your own. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, if you've noticed over the last few months of working in my art journal, that I'm not adding cut out words very often. Like occasionally I might add words. But the reason that I'm pretty discerning about, and I'm going to cut out these butterfly wings and just play with these wings for a minute, is that words can be limiter. Even when I create a vision board or lead a workshop of any kind, I rarely let people use words on their collage because words are limiter and our mind is super comfortable with words. It wants to add words. It wants to put those labels on things. But when we're working with connecting to our intuition and our subconscious, That's a state that, at least in the beginning, is beyond words. And working with intuitive collage and imagery is our way into our own deeper knowing. And so, if you're loving this intuitive collage, I really want to encourage you to think carefully about adding lots of words to your collages until the end. So sometimes you're going to find a phrase or one word that really sort of captures the meaning of the whole piece. So usually for me, when I'm doing intuitive collage, the words come last. And as you know, in my own visual journaling practice, I love doing journal writing before. Okay, I kind of like the butterfly wings. Maybe they fit the page just a little bit better. I'm a little bit torn. I'm going to cut these guys out too. But sometimes if we're stuck and we need a doorway or a portal into that deeper knowing, a word or a phrase can offer us some direction. So sometimes there's definitely value. And I'm just going to do a little fussy cutting here. So sometimes there's definitely value in starting with a word or a phrase. Like, for example, this follow your curiosity. If you allowed yourself to follow your curiosity, where would that take you? And it's not about putting the words on the page, but it's letting the words guide you. Or creativity is the greatest rebellion in existence. So if my creativity is rebellion, what would I create inspired by that? And I am so drawn to, and maybe this is the connection to angels' wings here, falling up into the cloud of unknowing. We often think of that unknowing or that unconscious as a going deep, but what if we're falling up? So I love the juxtaposition of that. I've also been sitting with this idea of following the path and mindful self-discovery. So there's lots of words here that are happening. Believe in the power of your dreams. Good morning, Yvonne. What if I flipped open a book or a magazine and the word self-compassion leaped out from a title or a headline? This looks like a subheading, leaped out off the page at me. Then I would want to create a page about self-compassion. So almost as if you were working with an oracle card, or a Bible is a great example, or any other spiritual text. It can be really fun to just open to a random page and a random place in the book and stick your finger down and see what it says, and let that be your point of entry. So those are a couple of different examples of how we might start a page with words, but the words aren't going on the page, although I might do some journal writing on here. But the words are just get me thinking curiously. So two ways to use words. One is to start the page inspired by some words. I'm working on the content for my retreat in May, my in-person retreat in May. I'm like, what's happening here with this wing? Trying to remember the direction they go. There we go. It's like a puzzle. Yep, those are definitely the wings that want to be on the page. Love that. So I'm going to collage her down and the wings down, and then I'm going to paint over all of it. So I'm starting with some collage elements, but I'm really going to make this piece my own first. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this other wing out. And sometimes I see people's vision boards, and no judgment about this, but there's no imagery. It's all words. And to me, it's a disservice to their dreams to not let them be in the sort of expansiveness of images, right? Because when we're, especially with when we're doing visioning work or unconscious self exploration work, images help us see what we didn't know. Words only give us access to what we already know. So sometimes we might think, oh, I found the perfect word for what it is that I want, but what else is possible? So, one of the reasons that I love this type of intuitive collage for mindful self discovery, like those words say, is because it opens me up to possibility and things I wasn't even thinking about. All right, I'm gonna get some of these scrappy bits out and I will save these butterfly wings for something else. And I'm gonna set these aside and I'm feeling like I'm gonna come in and just create a very abstract background. I thought about maybe starting with some of these collage images, but these colors weren't speaking to me this morning. I still had these from yesterday as well, these crazy magazine images, but I'm feeling blues and yellows wanting to show up on the page today. So actually this page is a little closer to the palette. And again, sometimes it's fun to just take that whole sheet. So this looks like something that I was using as a palette and or just blotting some paper with. So sometimes it's fun to just come in and explore because that one sheet of paper can be inspiration for the whole piece. I love it's kind of cloudy looking. There's lots more that I can add to it, but definitely this piece is speaking to me, which is funny because it's the piece that I was using to protect my page underneath here because it's the right size and shape. So let's see if I can get something else going under the edge there. Just want to protect that edge, and I'm going to come in with my matte medium and get this page all the way. And I really like that color over there. So this page is a little bit bigger than my journal here, but not by much. So I think I'm going to glue the whole thing down and then I will trim it at the end. When you're working with deli paper like this, be sure to flip it over because sometimes you get a really interesting look and a more transparent effect if you glue it down the other way as well. And get my matte medium happening here. Got my little scraper. So matte medium is a little, or the deli paper is a little bit fussy. And it's interesting that I picked the black for the background because we have some sort of representation of that deep. Maybe that's why I chose to start with the black this morning. But I'm brightening that up and I think I'm being inspired for sure by this idea of falling up into the clouds of unknowing. And I want to get as much of that color on there as I can. Then I'm just going to come in and kind of just gently from the center really start to push this out. Sometimes it's a little more challenging to work with a whole sheet, and the deli paper can be a little bit fragile. I'm okay if it gets some rips and tears in it. I might have a few places where I need to get a little more matte medium, but I'm just going to spread this all the way across. And I do like it going right across that page there. So that story feels like it's going to continue onto that other page. And again, adding this sheet of deli paper is going to help me to strengthen this newsprint that I'm working on in this magazine. All right. I'm just working out some of those bumps in my page. working in this magazine, the pages just wrinkle. So I just have to work with the wrinkles. And then I'm going to put matte medium all over the whole top of this to really seal this in. So that when I bring in more paint over the top of it, that the surface of that deli paper doesn't rip. But it also allows me to push back any paint I put on the top to these colors, right? I really love these washy colors here, these blues around the edges especially. And so if I wanted to, if I got too much paint on there, because I put the matte medium on, I can always take a baby wipe and just move that paint all the way back to that surface there. All right, I think we got that on there pretty good, and we're gonna get this little edge down. This also is going to create a nice support in the inside edges of the magazine here, because sometimes we do get some tearing. And you can see the difference where I put this down over the white and where I put it down over the black. So what I love about deli paper is the transparency. So how is everyone doing on this Thursday morning? Everyone got their coffee or their tea? Are you working away on your projects? Toby, or Tori, sorry, did you finish the project for your mother-in-law for her birthday celebration? Okay, that still needs a little bit. I can see just a little edge there. So I love using deli paper in my work for all kinds of things. I use it for tracing paper sometimes. I use it for gel printing. Sometimes I just use it for palette paper. No time for cleanup. I love that. I'm so grateful that I have all the space that I need, that I don't have to clean up. That I don't have to clean up. And good morning, Marion. Great to see you here. Okay, I'm thinking I want to get this a little bit dry, and I think I have my dryer here, so bear with me for just a minute. And oops, it's all tangled up, so give me a second. Love to hear in the chat while I'm drying this how others are doing this morning. What are you working on? Are you just hanging out and watching along? And I'm going to be noisy here for just a minute. Yay, so glad it turned out beautifully. Coffee with your granddaughter. Awesome. Hello, beautiful granddaughter. Okay, so the reason I decided to dry that, because you don't have to dry matte medium before you can just start going ahead and layering and adding the paint, is because I didn't want this fragile deli paper's like tissue. It's a little bit fragile, so I wanted the integrity of that paper. And I'm going to stick with this background color palette. So I'm going to come over here and see if, I don't even know what this was created with, if it was paint or, so I'm looking for, I kind of like this. I've got some deep green here. And it wasn't ultramarine blue. So I've got paint spread all over my studio right now. So maybe actually I love this. Some phthalo blue might be a little bit closer. So this was created a long time ago and I just found it in my stash. So I have actually no idea. So here's some nice turquoise. There's my phthalo blue. That's what I was looking for because I don't want this super thin high flow. I want something a little thicker. Definitely going to want some white. I had this great big bucket of white and stuck it in an empty mustard container. We love mustard. We go through a lot of mustard. And I'm so happy I put it in a squeeze bottle. And sorry I didn't think of it sooner. I'm going to do that with my black gesso as well. So this is a pretty fluid white acrylic. This is a super dark, deep green. I also love this. No, that one's probably, let's try this chromium oxide green. And this peachy color is this really interesting yellow, which I don't even know if I have any more of, or if I want that to be the one on there. So I'm going to go with my Naples yellow hue, which I've been obsessed with lately. And this tangerine twist is kind of fun. So here's my palette that I'm gonna play with, making Easter cards for your daughters. Beautiful. When you said that about the painting for your mother-in-law, it made me think about Mother's Day and when was the last time I made something handmade for my mom for her birthday. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my lights and come back in with my blues, but I want to just move some of these colors a little bit more around the page. And I want to keep this kind of flowy look going. And we'll just see how it goes. And we're going to create a quick background here. Feeling like that definitely it's some of that sky imagery. So I'm going to hold my brush very, very loosely. Let that paint be thick on there. And this is a paper artsy color by Seth Apter. I've had these for a long time. I love the texture and flow of these, and also just some of my absolute most favorite colors are from his line as well. So paper artsy and this fresco finish. My friend Andrea sells these in her Work of Heart studio. And so I'm noticing the brush isn't quite creating that same kind of texture that I wanted. So I'm going to come in and see if I can use a scraper to maybe move that around, or even maybe a brayer. Might be a little fun to create some texture. So I'm going for a really moody, cloudy sky, I think is kind of the effect that I want to create here. And Diego is keeping guard nice and quietly this morning over all my tools. And I just looked down on the floor and look at that gorgeous piece of carplay. I don't even know where it came from. It must have fallen out of my collage box, but feeling very drawn to copper this week. So maybe some copper needs to be in this page as well. So I love using brayers. I bought a whole set of them very inexpensively on Amazon of different sizes. I like this size, and I even have one smaller. And brayers just create a very different texture on the page. They move that paint around, and you can get some really interesting things happening. It helps you to thin out some of those layers, and also just to extend the paint a little farther than a brush. I'm just going to let those colors extend over to that page. So very interesting. So this is a very bright page, and I'm going to want to bring some of that moodiness back that was there before. So I'm going to come in with just a little bit of this phthalo blue, and I'm going to bring it back even into some of the spots where it was before and bring that back to the surface. And I'm thinking I want to water it down just a little bit and see what we can get it to, how we can get it to move around the page, because this is a heavy body acrylic, which is great for working on canvas and abstracts. It's not generally my go-to for working in a journal. And I really want that kind of washy, cloudy look around the edges. And when these mix together, I'm going to get some interesting greens, so I may not even need to add greens. And what I'm missing over here that must be on the other side of my studio, there's actually a great brush, a very particular kind of brush that's brilliant for creating clouds. And I'm not worried too much about the center here and what's happening in the center, because she's going to be in the center there. So we can lay her down and get a sense of what's happening. Want some of that dark maybe under her feet. And again, I think I'm going to come in with that brayer and just move some of that paint, smear it around. I'm going to get some nice spreading and layering happening that I couldn't otherwise get. And again, I'm just going to work dark to light here for a couple of minutes to create that background. Move all that extra over here onto this page. It'll become something else. Now I'm feeling like I really need to come back in with those whites to start to create our sort of cloudy sky effect. Again, the moodiness, I like that I can still see some of the light through, but there's a lot more dark happening now. So the page it's coming along. And I'm going to go walk over to my other table and see if I can find this other brush that I absolutely love for creating clouds. You should still be able to hear me because I'm connected to my microphone as I'm walking over here. Fan brushes work great for this as well, but having a round brush can really help too. There's different, like, so play and experiment with different kinds of brushes. Still didn't quite found the one I want, but we're going to try some of these. So I grabbed a nice round brush. This is a very thick brush that's made for working with acrylics, so it has really tough bristles. This is a just inexpensive chip brush, which does really cool things on the page. So again, I've talked about this before, but learning to play with your brushes to create texture and discover what they do is going to help to make your page, give it that unique look that you're looking for by knowing what things do. Yesterday, I opened this mustard container and my paint went spraying all over the table. So being just a little mindful of that, that was still probably more paint than I needed. But this gives this beautiful sort of scratchy marks. I can really scrub in there, start to blend. And I can't do this with one of those just flat brushes. So now I'm starting to feel like I'm getting that really moody, cloudy effect. I love painting clouds. And I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos on how to paint clouds. All right, and now we can come back here and see how it's coming along. I'm going to move some of that color around to the edges. And what I'm noticing is I want to bring a little bit of that yellow back, that light back. And I'm going to just let it sort of blend with what's here on the page. And let's try a little bit of this paper artsy. This one is called Tangerine Twist. I'm just going to use some of that same And it's mixing with what's on the brush, so I'm getting some nice greens happening in there. And this here, so I'm going to fold this back so I can actually see where the edge of my page is. So I got some nice green in there. And if I want that to actually be some pops of yellow, which I think maybe I want just a little bit of that yellow to come back, I'm going to get my brush clean and I'm going to get this really dry. And then I'm going to come back with one layer of white. She already has paint all over her and it doesn't matter because I'm going to paint her out anyway. And let's see, how are we doing with our wings here? So I can see by just laying those down over the top what I need to pay attention to and what I don't, what's going to be covered up. So definitely not loving the greens. Maybe it feels like it's competing with the colors that she's wearing, but again, I may just paint her and so it may not matter. I'm actually loving the pure white of the wings, and so I may use these wings just as guidelines, trying to decide. I think I'm going to go ahead and collage them in and then paint over them because it saves me the drawing time. And again, I'm really sitting with this idea of the falling up into clouds of unknowing. That's just really this curious. I get too much mess. I get a little overwhelmed when my table gets too messy, so I do tend to pause as I go along and clean up. Like I'm cool with lots of paint and brushes everywhere, but all those little bits of paper kind of drive me personally bonkers. So also just paying attention to your workspace as you go, I think is important. So as always, I'm allowing this page to just evolve. So I'm going to take a second to get it dry here. And I'm going to come back in with that same brush, but I'm going to get it clean and dry as I can. And I'm thinking I want to come in maybe even with one little bit brighter yellow. So let's pop in a little bit of this primary yellow from Liquitex. I just got this one, and so I'm having fun playing with it. And I want to push back some of this green and get a little bit more light. It probably needs a little bit more white. I always tend to push back the white, and I might have needed that white underneath. I'm still getting, it's still green, but it's a little bit brighter. It's making me a little bit happier. Definitely needs just a little bit more white. And this comes out fast. So we're going to put it over here. And now we'll get a lot more light happening, especially maybe up at the top. Again, I'm holding my brush loosely. I think one of the things to remember when you're painting in a more abstract way like this is don't grip your brush tightly and don't hold it like a pen, but to learn to just hold it loosely. And it's almost as the same metaphor as I would use for doing this type of deep intuitive collage work. Hold it lightly, hold the story lightly, hold the meaning lightly. Going deep doesn't mean that it needs to be dark or sad. Sometimes it just means that it's below the surface. So holding our own personal growth lightly is a really valuable tool. Okay, super groovy. Love this page. Almost feeling like I'm going to come do this whole other page over here in clouds as well. And I kind of like that little bit of orangey light shining from behind her, a little bit of difference. Noticing now where maybe I'm going to bring back just a little bit of our dark blue again. Remember, I'm going for that moodiness and that contrast. And I think I showed you guys this trick before, but when you want to really look for contrast in a painting, if you just come in with your smartphone, and that's a gorgeous piece all right there on its own. This doesn't quite match, but this would make gorgeous collage paper. And so what we can do is to take this photo and print it out on deli paper or tracing paper, or just regular inkjet painter, and then I have some nice collage material. But if I come in here and I change this to black and white, you can see how I've got these nice darks over here, but there's none of those darks over here. And I really want to not have the eye just totally drawn. So I want to make sure that I bring some of those darks over there. So if you have a smartphone, this is a super easy way to really come in and look at your images and see what needs to change. And in my eye, this looked like a place of dark, but it didn't end up being as dark as the rest. And maybe I'm going to just bring a little bit of that in there too. It's funny, I forget how much I love this brush and the texture that it creates. And I'm just going to get way down into that crease as well. You got a piece of that deli paper sticking up. So just letting that story just flow right over there onto the other page. So now it feels like my darks are a little bit more balanced. And it's going to be, the whole story is going to end up being a little more pleasing to the eye. All right, so let's bring our character. The easiest thing to do, Marion, is probably to just, yeah, the black and white makes such a big difference, Blanca. The easiest thing to do is just order it on Amazon, or if you go to Andrea's shop at a Work of Heart studio, she sells it in small, like you can buy 10 sheets. If you and you can buy a box on Amazon of, hundreds of sheets. They don't usually have it at the grocery store, and you can get it at Costco, but it comes in such big boxes that, it would take me a whole lifetime to get through it. So I oftentimes will just buy 20 sheets from Andrea at a Work of Heart studio. But I did look on Amazon recently because for the retreat, I'll want to have a nice big box of it around. So that's another place. And some grocery stores might carry it, or Walmart might carry it. I don't know what you have available. But if you're an Amazon shopper, then you can definitely get it on Amazon. All right, it's so fascinating how green this turned out instead of yellow. And I really want it to be more yellow than green. Before I move on, I think I'm looking for that contrast to her. So I'm going to come back in one more time. Little bit thicker paint and see if we can just push back a little bit of the green. I don't need to get rid of all of it. But I also really love this Naples yellow hue. So taking time, right, to just feel into the story. And it's this idea that just there's a lot of drama happening here. For some reason that I'm feeling this morning, I've got my falling up into the clouds of a knowing is going to be the name of this piece. And if you missed my discussion at the beginning about using words in your intuitive collage, I don't usually. When I'm working this way, I feel like it's really important to let the imagery speak and tell the story. And I've been doing this work a long time, so it's easy for me to let the images speak. But when you're newer to working with intuitive collage, sometimes just finding one word or a phrase can be all you need to be your portal into your creative session for the day. So I keep a whole box full of cut out words and phrases that I can flip through for that inspiration. And then sometimes the words come after, and we find the perfect word to help us remember what a piece stood for. Okay, this is really coming together nicely. I'm really wanting to see some contrast in her. So her clothes are going to get painted a different color, but I don't know what that color is yet. But I'm going to start by getting these wings down on the page. And I can't believe it's 7:47 already. So this is one of those fussy pages that is taking a while to get to the story that I really want to be telling. And let's put those all the way up at the top. And I don't care if that black ink from my printer smears at all, because I'm going to paint over all of this anyway. And there's dirty paint on here as well. So matte medium can also sometimes dissolve paint that's on the surface of something. So if you want to keep things really clean, make sure your scraper is clean and your page is dry. And that's how you'll get that, stop that from happening. But like I said, at this moment, it doesn't matter because this is all going to get painted over. And I want to make sure these wings are even. When I was doing my Creatively Fit training with Whitney Freya, one of our final projects was to paint a pair of wings, and it was one of my favorite paintings ever. I think eventually it did get painted over, but I love painting wings. And today this feels, when I'm doing art journaling, when I'm working on canvas, I prefer to hand draw things. But when I'm working in an art journal and I only have an hour for a session, right, this is when I really love to find those quick ways to get images on the page. It's a little bit maybe of a cheat, if you will. And so I'm going to come in and just get a layer of white over these guys. And some blue coming in there. Could have been left on my brush, could be mixing from the, and I'll need a little tiny brush to get into some of those nooks and crannies. But this just helps me get the shape of the wings down, and then I can begin to make them my own. They probably are going to have some other colors on them, and I'm kind of wanting to let that wing just flow over a bit onto this other page so we can see the end of that wing. So again, I'm using this collaged image. No cheating. Shortcuts. One of my friends said, don't call it cheating, call it shortcuts. So maybe that's a better way to put it. But I'm really using this as a template or guideline for the shape of the wings. And then I have paint still left on my brush. I'm just going to continue to build up the paint over on this other page over here. And Marion, I did buy a big block of those Horizon magazines on eBay. There are quite a few sellers selling them. These I got for 25 cents a piece. I think I paid $5 a piece, and that's still inexpensive for a nice magazine in hardback like this. And so I'm looking forward to getting those and digging in. And they were printed from 1959 to sometime in the late 70s. So it's been fun sort of researching the history of them. And my husband said he thinks maybe his parents also got this magazine, and he would have been really young to remember that. So next time I see his parents, I'll have to ask them. All right, I just want to come in. Clean up all these edges. And they don't need to be too neat. So when you actually look at a feather, they're not always super neat. They are often messy around the edges. I collect feathers every time I go for a walk. My jackets and pockets get full of them, and then I have to hide them because the cats eat them. Silly cats. So I'm using the black that I can see underneath to just bring back some of the wingy shape. I'm not going to do a lot to the wings. I kind of like them bright and white. I can really see them on the page, so there's some nice light there. It definitely got some of that blue paint. This one got a little more painted out, so I'm just sort of imagining where those lines are. And again, having a variety of sizes of brushes in your stash is also really helpful. All right. Let's move that paint around a little bit. And it's coming together nicely. So I'm thinking about, do I want to change the color here? Yeah, and you really have to look, Marion. So there were definitely people selling them, smaller lots for more money. And I just watched for a couple of days, and eventually I think because I clicked on it a few times, the price dropped like $10 for the batch. But I'm thinking for my art retreat in May that everyone will get a copy as their journal, which will be really fun. So I love how it sort of continued to this other page over here. And so I think this page I like this light blue. Maybe this is going to become a journaling page over on the side. And I'm still trying to decide what it is that she needs. Like her face, I love the fierceness of her gaze, not loving the green of her clothes, and thinking about what would stand out relative to all of this. So So I've got these are the orange and yellow are already sort of, or the, sorry, the orange and blue are really contrasting colors. So I have a little bit of warm and cool already on the page. So I could go just about any direction. So this is where maybe I'm going to audition some colors. And I'm going to grab just a piece of scratch paper. That orange feels pretty bright. Maybe. I'm wanting something subtle, and I'm wondering if maybe even it's a darker green, that it's not the green that's bugging me, but the contrast. So what is her story? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to yet. So if I am falling up into the cloud of unknowing, what is it that I'm seeking? And so maybe there's connection to my own inner wisdom, might be a theme that's rising here. The other theme, like the look on her face, like this feels like she's like a fierce protector, right? So maybe she's this wise guardian, a wisdom keeper. Hey, Julie. Great question. Let me send you, I can send you a follow-up email to play along, but to start with, I am just working in an old recycled book, but you could use any journal or mixed media paper of any kind. And I'm working with a few magazine images and acrylic paints. And the only thing special that I think you would need is some matte medium. And I can even, Julie, get you a small thing of this if you wanted to test it first. Maybe Zentangle on her clothes. Yvonne, I love that idea. Marion says she looks impatient. Interesting. Well, impatience is definitely me. I do kind of like, maybe I'm going to put just a little bit of this orange on her shoes and make her shoes pop up a little bit. And she's got some red in her skirt. And Zentangle might be a fun idea. I love that. And that little bit of orange, I might come in and just add, and this is a brush. I think it's made out of plastic. It has very hard bristles. So maybe we're going to bring a little bit of this in here. It might get painted out later, but I'm using just a tiny little bit of that orange. Put a little highlight in her wing there. Okay, like the orange and like just that little bit of extra detail. So again, this is the place of experimentation and play. I feel like I'm in that cloud of unknowing. Marion says she looks impatient. I think she looks focused. I do like the idea of maybe adding some patterns. So maybe she needs the green and the orange. And I'm painting right on to the image. She doesn't have a matte medium on her or gesso to seal her, so the paper is probably going to buckle. I got to be careful not to get it too wet. And it's also the paper's thirsty. It's really drinking up that paint and getting wet quite quickly. All right, that's just adding a little bit more playfulness. I do like the idea of either adding Zentangle to her or maybe even to the wings. Okay, I'm loving the orange. I just had to go for it. And Julie, we can schedule a play date. I love having people come play in the studio, and I have all the things. So you could come play in the studio and try things out. All right. I was nervous to put the orange on there, but there's something about bringing this pop of color and fire to her. Bye, Marion. Have a great rest of your day. I can't believe it's after 8 already. So this one is not going to get finished in this session. I like it when I finish them in a session, but some of these more intuitive pages that have a story to tell take a little bit longer. So she's getting there. She's not quite there, but I'm starting to see her unfolding. Again, I'm going to have to sit with her for a while and let her story unfold. She does feel fierce to me, feels focused, but she's got these wings. So there's this guardian imagery. And also, when I think of wings, I think of taking flight. And if I'm falling up into clouds of unknowing, there's a sense of taking flight. Use up the rest of that orange over here. So I'm not quite ready to glue her down yet, but I love where it's going. And I'm wondering if maybe she's not even quite the right figure there. So this is what I mean by not always gluing things down, but auditioning pieces to get a sense of if they're the right part of the story. But what I love is this background story. I keep wanting to use her in a piece and then she never ends up being there. So that's an interesting story in itself, that she's been floating around for a long time and yet not ever ending up in the final page. So that's part of it's totally evolving. So again, it's trusting that unknowing. And so just remembering when we're using words in an intuitive collage piece to limit the number of words, to use the word maybe as a point of entry or to name the piece at the end, but to really let the images evolve and speak and tell the story, because it allows us to bypass our thinking mind and get direct access to our subconscious. All right, my creative friends, that is it for today. I will be back next Monday. And in the month of April, I'm going to be focusing on using poetry in my art journaling and how I use poetry as inspiration for imagery and writing, how I incorporate the words of poems into my piece. Super excited about it. I was going through some of my poetry books today and finding all kinds of yummy poems. And I can't believe next week is April already. So have a beautiful rest of your day. Great to see all of you. Thanks for joining me live. Thanks for watching the replay. Please hit the like button. This really encourages other people to watch along with us. So appreciate all of you. Thanks so much. And I will see you all next week.